Hey, what's up everyone, it's Sasha, and I'm here to introduce my very first movie discussion video. I collaborated with my friend Ellie, aka Lives from the Crypt, on a discussion about disturbing cinema. And we talk about its impact and value beyond just that of shock. I'm sorry about all these cuts, I am really rusty at this, please bear with me. Ellie is super knowledgeable and has a lot of great points to talk about here, and I also have a few pretty good points, but I'm a little shy in this video, which I'm a little embarrassed about, I guess. And I don't quite talk about as much as I would have liked, but as I said, this is my first discussion video, and I plan on doing more and getting better at this as time goes on. Oh, fucking hot in this bitch. The air conditioning is on and everything, god damn. And also because this is my first discussion video, there are several technical issues that I will give you a heads up on, so you'll have an idea of what to be prepared for going into it. The first thing you'll notice is that I'm super blurry in the beginning. This is because after I initially joined the Discord call, I forgot to change the screen display settings. And so, to fix this, I zoomed in on my tiny little screen that was on there, and I zoomed in on Ellie's, and I cropped it so that it looks like this. The next error you'll notice is a twofer with the audio. Do I have a sweat mustache? Ooh, oh, that's good. Oh, that's so good. And so for the audio for this video, I decided to use my new webcam's built-in microphone and test how that worked. Well, now I know that I shouldn't do that. The biggest issue is that it only recorded in the left audio channel for some reason. So when you hear me talk, I'm just in the left audio channel. It's irritating. I'm sorry. The next thing you'll notice about the audio is that for the first few minutes, the audio on Ellie has a very significant echo on it. That's because I was running the sound through my desktop speakers, so it was playing through my speakers, which the microphone on my webcam was picking up. I did turn it down after a few minutes, so it's only really noticeable for the first few minutes, and that's because I noticed that it was kind of loud when I was recording, so I turned down the volume on my speakers. Thank fucking Christ I did that so soon. Remember when I said it was a twofer?
I lied.
Thirdly, since Ellie was using a proper mic setup like a goddamn professional, and I was just using my webcam's built-in microphone, Ellie's audio is much louder than mine is. To compensate for this, I lowered Ellie's volume and increased mine. And there was only so much I could do to balance things out, so please bear with me, I'm sorry. Alright, so that should be all the technical issues I have to prepare you guys for. So let's get on with things, but I just want to remind you guys to check out all of Ellie's stuff. I've put all of her links down in the description there. Yeah, they have a YouTube channel, they have a couple bands, they have social media and stuff, so definitely go check them out. Okay, that's it. I will shut the fuck up now, and we can get on with the video. I don't think I've ever done an introduction before. Okay. So, people who are already following me, I'm Sasha Bobashosaurus, which is a big fucking mouthful, but that's the name I'm sticking with for now. And back in the day, the long ago time when I was doing Evil Steve, some folks who are still around used to follow me there. I used to review and crack jokes at extreme horror movies. That was my thing. I'd also do monster movies, and it's I'd break it up because I would do some super intense movies, and then I'm okay, let me just do a fucking silly werewolf movie or something, some really crappy werewolf movie. It's a palate cleanser. Because after I did the fucking Slaughter Vomit Doll trilogy, I fucking was I need to do a werewolf movie. But anyways, I'm going off on a tangent. But anyways, yeah, and through a bunch of sequence of events, I pulled the plug on that before I was finished with it, and I'm really kind of coming back to extreme horror for the first time in a while, and I didn't realize how long it had been since I had seen a lot of them, and yeah, and I'm looking at them through a new lens because I was in a very a much more unhealthy mental place then, and I'm in a better place now. So it's interesting looking back in retrospective. That was like a really bloated intro. I'm sorry.
You're totally good.
All right, and Ellie, take it away.
Hello, my name is Ellie, also known as Looks from the Crypt here on YouTube. On my channel, honestly, I kind of talk about whatever I want. I don't really have a real thing. I guess my thing I would say is definitely SOV and slashers, 90s Y2K vibes, and then with that as well, I guess how I found myself here in extreme horror is that I was an edgy teenager growing up, definitely looking up most fucked up movies online and shit like that. Um, so it's been really interesting because I've been doing a lot of revisiting myself as well, and with like a different mindset and kind of really watching the movies for truly what they are as opposed to just trying to see some like grotesque shit. So, and it's been a fun ride.
Yeah, that's kind of where I am. Like I'm revisiting some. Like I just revisited a couple of the August Underground movies. It had been a minute, and I watched the first one. That one still held up really well. Like it's still like a really well done like found footage kind of thing. Like it really feels like slice of life. And then I was watching Mortem, and I was like, okay, this is really gross, but it's starting to get silly because I feel like they're trying a little too hard to top the other one. And
Yeah.
introducing the narrative was like kind of like that wasn't stuff I thought of back then. I was just like, oh wow, it's so fucked up. Ah. Oh, it's fucking brutal.
Yeah, okay, that's like the funny thing. So, as a teen, I watched the first August Underground and I fucking hated it because I thought it was really boring and annoying.
Mhm.
And I was just like, this is just like dudes screaming. However, that's actually like a big fave of mine now because like my teen brain couldn't really process why that movie rips, and that's because it is a very true slice of life film, which like adds to the realism in terms of like really making it feel like some shit you encountered.
Mhm.
My brain when I was a teenager was definitely way more equipped for Mortem, which is good for what it is in my opinion. However, it's just not quite what I want it to be because they well that's when they got rid of all the like day to day type of shit,
Yeah, and
which
it was
was what
all
I think
just like
really made
torture. It was
August
like,
Underground.
yeah,
Yep. However, I still think nothing really beats the like final scene of Mortem.
that's like
So
they go over the top and like again, I was like kind of finding it silly that even as weird as that sounds, because like I'll have to put like maybe I won't include this clip in the final video, but we'll talk about like the
fair.
dude is like fucking like the dead kid and is like, oh, you'll never have to
Yeah.
go. Blah, 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 blah. I'm like, this is just seems kind of edgelordy. I don't know.
I mean, to be fair, August Underground Mortem is like Edgelord the movie for sure.
Yeah,
So
like my
even
review.
if they kind of created it, I guess, you know,
Yeah,
but
like my little
yeah.
brief review on like my Instagram is like August Underground's edgelord.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
then personally,
definitely.
I'm a hater for Penance. I do that movie feels like it shouldn't have existed,
I'm
but
wondering
that's
how I'm gonna
just
feel about that
me.
one going back to it. Like, I
On it,
remember.
my thing.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say my thing is like they definitely try to go back to true form in terms of having like a lot of like slice of life and day to day, but then like it's like actually boring though. And
I remember
it
it's
feels
mostly them
like we were
fighting.
forced. Yeah, and like it feels like we're forced to have this conclusion that nobody really asked for. Um, so I'm not really a fan of that one. I kind of tried like I'm just like when it comes to penance.
Yeah, I remember like liking that one the least when I watched the original Let's trilogy initially, like 10 years ago. I was like, yeah, I was like, I thought I'd heard like people saying it's like, oh, it's like even more sick than the second one. And then I was like, really? I just remember like one like gore scene with like a baby, and like that's I don't remember much else for like standout scenes or anything from it.
Basically, yeah. And then I can never remember is penance the one with the Christmas scene or is that Mortem?
I don't remember Christmas scene in Mortem, so I'm assuming Penance.
Okay. It must be penance then. And that scene's pretty good, but then that's all it really has to offer for me, so
Well, it keeps
not a
that.
fan.
Yeah. Now, one thing I wanted to talk about was like using them as like horrifying experiences, like and like experiencing intense feelings, like in a safe, controlled, like kind of environment.
Mm-hmm.
And like I do like to do that
Kind of
with
go
like
back.
yeah, like movies about like difficult subject matter. Like it helps me like deal with like some like my own trauma and stuff by like being able to sit with them in a safe space, you know.
Totally, and I feel like I don't know, a lot of people feel that way just being able to like see like these scenes like kind of like replicated and seeing it in like a fictional manner than like a reality kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that's like the one aspect I don't think I've ever been able to like relate to because I've always felt like very, I guess, distant from movies despite being like
Hmm.
really into them, if that makes sense. So yeah,
I did kind of.
I know that's
Oh, I mean, I did. I
you're
was gonna.
good.
Oh, I was gonna say that. I did. For a while, like I didn't like really get the emotional connection out of movies, and like I just went through like a whole bunch of like life changes and stuff, and I started experiencing emotions differently. Like yay, like recovery. But so it's like they're like these emotional experiences kind of for me now. So like I
Mm-hmm.
like not every movie is like that. Like I was like if I want to laugh at like a dumb like cringe comedy, I'll throw on like Grandma's Boy or something. Like I don't need to emotionally connect with that, but you know.
Yeah. I would say my thing, I guess, I feel like more of a greater connection to is like I guess still similarly to like the extreme, but like the like depressing slash like disturbing like dramas more
Yeah,
than
like
like I guess
I
the
have this
horror
here, so
films.
this
Yep.
is one we talked about. Like my one of my favorite movies of all time because of like it works goes like tells this like really traumatic story, but does it in like this really like gentle kind of way. It's like super beautiful, man.
Right. Yeah. And like I don't know, it does like a really great way of like showing like the I guess like the how do I say spectrum of processing trauma since like we have two characters experiencing the same event who
Hmm.
like dealt with it like entirely differently.
Yeah,
And I always just give props to Mysterious Skin for having like the scariest like alien sequences like I've ever fucking seen, like
yeah.
especially for not even being a horror movie.
That shit gave
Um
me chills the first time I saw it. Especially, I was like, yeah, fucking, and yeah, it was such like obviously it's a movie about like childhood like sexual trauma and like the one kid like blocking it out and the other one just kind of becoming like hypersexual and like his type is like kind of like older men and all that kind of stuff and the other kid just thinks he was abducted by aliens and
mhm.
the way it all is like unpacks is like so fucking like perfect and
Yeah, I feel like it's
yeah
just like a really good way of like showing like because I always forget the character's name, but like
there's
what's his name?
Neil's Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character.
Okay, yeah, like Neil like basically finds comfort in more or less recreating his trauma in like a safe manner because he's like
Hmm.
in charge of it, and then
Yeah,
other kid glasses kid has completely like suppressed it and doesn't even like realize that that's really what happened. So that's just
yeah,
like such an earth shattering moment once that's like brought to light by Neil.
yeah, and like yeah, and he seems like he never knew anything about sexuality like when it happened, and so like that kind of like explains like why they have like such different like reactions to their coach like abusing them.
And I don't know, I feel like I don't know, that movie just does like a really great job at like truly demonstrating and showing like the like what our like brain's responses are to trauma.
Hmm. Like
Like you know the
vast like polar
fight freeze.
opposite responses. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, and God, that ending fucking breaks me every fucking time.
I
Like,
fucking cry.
yep, like when I need like to have like oh, sometimes I just like go those days where I'm just like I feel like I need to cry. I'm not sure why, but I need to cry. So like I'll just decide like what kind of cry do I need? I'll pick out a movie, and if I need like a super deep, kind of sad cry, I'm going with Mysterious Skin. Like that'll do the trick. Let's go for one of your topics you had selected.
Yeah, totally. So I guess like I'm just like starting from the top and just gonna go in order.
Okay.
So
I think that's kind of what I'm
basically
doing.
my first one was just mostly just like how I got here. In terms of all the extreme horror with like really began that love, which was I guess I've always been a big fan of horror. My parents were really big horror fans, so therefore I got to watch like all sorts of shit when I was way too young too. And like
Same.
with that, like I remember like starting off with like a lot of the really like goofy stuff, like like Killer Clowns from Outer Space, like
Yep,
Army of Darkness and
that was
stuff like
one.
that. I feel like that's kind of what was a real catalyst in general, just because I feel like due to having those experiences so young, that made me kind of like as an adult be like continuing to like search for that feeling of like being scared again or having like my boundaries pushed
Hmm.
because I've already accepted I'll probably never be scared by a movie ever again. But I could definitely be made to feel uncomfortable, feel like or like made to feel like my boundaries are being like pushed further and further.
Yeah, yeah, I
And
feel that.
I guess like my first experience with extreme horror is when I think I was like in middle school. I was like 12 or 13. Um, my brother, who's like 5 years older than me, we found Cannibal Holocaust on YouTube,
Oh my god.
which is kind of wild to think that that was on there. And yeah, I watched that and I was like, damn, that was some fucked up shit.
That was the first. That was like my introduction into extreme horror was Cannibal Holocaust because I saw it at like it's like I didn't know like movies like that could exist. Like I knew like there was like R-rated movies and like I thought like that was it. It's
Totally okay.
crazy.
That's like the thing though. Is like I feel like having the like first experience of like understanding that like movies can go that far
Mm-hmm.
is like fucking wild because I feel like a lot of us felt like that wasn't like possible for whatever reason, right? And like just having
Yeah.
that first like experience of being like, oh shit, they can do that,
Yeah.
really like sparks something within
It
you,
does.
and
Like, the first time
it's
you
just like
see,
really fun.
yeah, the first time you see them do something in a movie that you just didn't know could be done in a movie, like I remember like the first time I saw Caligula and there was like explicit sex in it. I'm like, I didn't know you could do that in like a regular movie, and, like stuff like that. That was another example of a wild fucking movie that was like opened my mind to like other ideas of what movies could be.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And like similarly for me, especially with like Slaughter Vomit Dolls, because that shit was already on like Netflix.
Yeah, it's
So it
crazy, and
felt
it's
really
like,
weird to like be able to just see some shit like that on like a platform like that. And
yeah,
like I just remember like seeing that for like the first time and being like really like in awe of the fact that like oh, there's like a whole other world out here that like I didn't really like know about kind of
mm,
thing.
yeah,
And
yeah,
being like
totally.
completely opened up to that.
Like obviously, like a Serbian film was like a huge like moment in extreme cinema history.
Serbian film is really like funny for me. That's a horrible word, but like I guess like my experiences with it because I mostly remember I was like definitely I my washer's on and I was like what the fuck is that? But just my washer. I would there was a dude who fancied me. And he definitely
Oh
like
yeah.
thought I was just like some weird bitch, so he was like, "Let's go." And like I just remember he like invited me over to watch like a Serbian film, and I was just like, "That's like pretty wild, you know that, right?" And he was definitely like, "Yeah, the chorus." And then it was like the most uncomfortable experience ever to like sit there and watch that as like a date
That
when you're
is.
like 16. So also
There's.
he definitely didn't know what he was in for either,
Oh, he
like
hadn't
which
seen
made
it.
it funnier. No,
Oh my god.
that was like the thing. I think he literally would just like, oh, I'm trying to impress like this weird
Oh,
girl. What's like
okay.
the most fucked up movie I can like ask her to watch
Okay,
with
yeah,
me? And then
I
it
get what you're
was that.
saying.
And then yeah, I was definitely like, are you sure you wanna? And he was like, yeah, I got this. And then yeah, it was like the most uncomfortable experience ever because he definitely like was not with the vibe and probably had not seen like any of the movies you should probably watch
Oh my
before
god.
getting there kind of thing. I feel like there's never a good time to watch that. I feel like meaning to like rewatch and revisit because I haven't seen it since I was like pretty young. And yeah, which that's funny. Sorry, another movie that used to be on YouTube. Um,
Oh damn, really?
somehow, which is beyond me. But
Jesus.
yeah, but like it just never feels like a good time to. And like I brought like, look, I wanted to watch a movie to my partner. I was like, well, here's my options right now. And he was like, I've seen that once, and I think that's all I need for like my lifetime. And I was like, that's fair.
Yeah, like it was 10 years for me. Like when I rewatched it, like I hadn't done re-seen it since I did like an Evil Steve episode, which is funny because I do a date skit at the end of it. um, and I like really appreciated it a lot when I rewatched it because I just kind of got the themes. Because like once like I was able to separate myself from like all the controversy that kind of was around when I first saw it, because like everybody was talking about like
Yeah, people
people were
definitely
losing their
pose
shit.
like a
People were
Serbian film as
losing their
like child
shit.
pornography.
Yeah, they were losing their shit, man. Yeah, like watching it like disconnected from all that and like a new lens, I was able to appreciate it a lot actually. And I was surprised. Like I was like, wow, I'm liking this movie a lot. Like I feel like they're
Hmm.
trying to communicate a theme that needs like that kind of extremity and like that intensity to convey like how brutally feel like they're being fucked by like their government, basically. And I was like, I get it now. Like after like all like the wild, ridiculous shit that's been going on, like I get it now.
Yeah, I'm really excited to watch that with like the adult lens as opposed to
Mm.
like I'm on a comfortable date watching like a fucked up movie kind of thing. So I'm really looking forward to like a revisit on that one because yeah, I'm about the same. I think it's been like about 10 years for me.
Yeah.
So I mean, because I mean, August Underground hit so differently,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like I when I decided to rewatch that, it was about a year ago now. That's fucking wild. Um, I feel like I watched it at a really good time because I watched it when like the Dahmer show came out and like all those like really like romanticized like serial killer like
Oh, like the one that came out recently.
docudramas.
Yeah,
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 like the Netflix one and stuff like that.
yeah. I hadn't
So
watched that. I
I
was
feel
like,
like I wanted to watch, but I never got around to it. But like, I feel like rewatching August Underground during like this really weird like serial killer hype moment was like a really good time too because it's quite literally the opposite of romanticizing serial killers.
yeah,
So
like they're just like
yeah,
vile assholes, vile, obnoxious assholes. Well,
and
these
are
particular
also
ones.
like painfully like human. I always think like
Yeah.
that towards the beginning it's always so hilarious when like Peter's like dismembering like a body but like puking and like gagging
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, I just like live for that because it really shows like oh no, it's just some piece of shit.
Also, like they have like their moments of normalcy, and like that's why like the first movie is so effective because like there's all those scenes of them just like fucking around doing like mundane shit mixed in with like bashing somebody's head in at a fucking convenience store or something. Just
Okay,
like
that seems so wild and something I a really important detail from that I
oh
always
yeah.
remember is when they're like leaving, like a cop pulls up like behind them,
Yes,
and I'm always like, did they fucking get pulled over?
I wondered that
Like,
too. I was like, wait a minute, was that like a staged thing? Did they know somebody with like access to a cop car, or was like that an actual cop car? Like thinking they were doing some shit.
not to derail, but what are you drinking? I'm
Oh,
curious.
you're good. Truly strawberry lemonade. Is it
Ooh,
backwards?
fancy. So I'm like the opposite of IPA man. I am like girl who's really into like sours and ciders.
I fuck
It
with those.
is
Oh hell yeah!
some like fancy shit from a brewery. It's Sun-Made Fruit Fusion Sour Strawberry Rhubarb like ale, and it's really
Damn.
fucking
Okay,
good.
that sounds fucking good. Thing I wanted to bring up was like seeing like disturbing movies like Mysterious Skin, like dramas and stuff like that, or like even like movies where people are like tortured or like there's like rape or like really intense things like that. Like it's good for like helping like understand what an experience like that could be like empathizing with people who have like experienced like really extreme trauma. I feel like it's helpful in that regard.
Yeah, 100%. Well, especially with like the example of mysterious skin, because I feel like that's a really good way to like understand like truly like the ins and outs of trauma. I recommend that to like people who aren't survivors of like sexual abuse, but like have people that they care for who are, because I feel like it really does a great way of like
Mm-hmm.
truly getting into it and understanding it for what it is. And like it's one of
Yeah,
those things where
absolutely.
like
I agree.
I don't know, it helps like definitely like humanize people a lot, because I feel like it's really easy for people to, you know, kind of be shitty when it comes to like people who've experienced fucked up things, being like, well, why didn't you do this or that? But then really,
Yeah, yeah, it's
really
super
well
fucked up.
shows like why somebody would have or not done something, or how it's like
Mm-hmm.
affected them. And then in addition with that, I think another example I really like is The Girl Next Door, because
That's a
that
fucking
shit's,
rough
I mean,
one.
a real
That
story.
is a
So
rough one.
like,
I haven't seen that in a long ass
yeah,
time. I'm wondering how that's gonna be when I revisit it.
horrible.
When was the last time you
I'll say
watched it?
that.
When was the last time you watched
Pretty
it?
recently,
Yeah.
within like the past 2 years.
Okay.
Yeah, and I was like, man, that sunk my stomach.
Yeah,
For sure.
it's got like the religious stuff, and like I'm like a recovering Catholic. I grew up, and so there's like a whole bunch of like religious trauma that I'm kind of been working through, and it's like, and I know there's like a religious angle into that. I know that like really kind of that really cuts deep when it's like based on like religious shit too.
Yeah, sometimes like just those depictions are just so gnarly, and like helps you like really put like real
Yeah,
shit into
like
like a different perspective.
sometimes you need to see like the reality of it. Like I feel like it thematically, like it can work better in movies, like when you don't show a traumatic event. But I feel like
Yeah.
in certain cases, it's also equally valid to show it in like explicit detail to be able to digest like the entire reality of it.
I'm like really like not into like sense, like okay, sometimes it could be like tasteful to not show like the thing and just having things be like implied, but like
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I'm just not really into censorship when it comes to like really hard stuff, just because I feel like sometimes people truly don't like understand like the reality of like these events that like truly do happen to people
Yeah,
and shit like that, and it really like hones that in and like often like humanizes it. So it's really weird because I also have like a love hate relationship with it, because there's a lot of like fetishization when it comes to like
yeah. When
all
it's
of that as well. I have my line. It kind of depends on how and what.
mm,
Like a real raw, like horrible, like torture, like rape scene or whatever it may be has its like time and place, and like has to be like in this right tone for the right kind of movie.
yes,
Whereas I also feel like sometimes you get like a really weird I feel like we've all seen shit like this where you get like a weirdly like sexy rape scene, or like a weirdly sexy
yeah,
torture scene in a
yeah.
movie where the rest of the tone does not fit that. Like the rest of the movie feels awful, right? And then you're like, why is this hot? This should not be.
We were talking about like people who go through like really extreme like intense trauma, like I'm like really I kind of got drawn into like rape revenge movies because of like
Same.
a particular like someone I was like really close to like a long time ago, like they had like a particularly violent sexual assault, and like I was like was filled with like so much anger, and like was like for a time I was like actually trying to like think of like how can I actually like go out and like try and find who did it, and like all this like shit was like, but like I realized like okay, I'm way in over my head, I'm not gonna do that. But I was like that was kind of what drew me to this genre, because I was like being able to like experience like something similar to what someone I cared about like experience, and like understand like where they're coming from a little more, and also get the satisfaction of seeing the people responsible fucking get theirs, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've always been like a really big fan of like the rape revenge genre, just because yeah, it is like nice to see people get what they get, and
Mm-hmm.
like I don't know, it's like one of those things also where like I know a lot of people like have their qualms with like, you know, I spit on your grave trying to say that like it has like a very gratuitous like rape scene, which like it does, but at the
Mm-hmm.
same time I feel like it's needed to like evoke those emotions
I
for
absolutely
sure, so
agree.
that like the revenge like
Yeah,
feels really good in that
like to like
movie.
really build up the fucking the anger. which is like the first time I saw it, I was like taken back when she like seduced them like to kill him. I was like, because I was like, I wanted like a savage revenge, but like I just rewatched it like a few days ago, and like really seeing like the nuances of what was going on was like really impressed me. I thought it was like handled like pretty well, like not like the best, but like pretty well. I think like how she kind of weaponized her sexuality and like reclaimed it by like using it to lure them in and like gain her power back, and then like it's like she gained her power back from each one and then killed them, kind of.
Yeah, definitely. And like, I don't know, I definitely really like that movie. I think it's great. And
Yeah.
it's just funny because of how much came from one film also. Because, you know, that kind of like started like that kind of kickstarted like the whole like subgenre in itself. And
Oh yeah.
yeah, it's absolutely wild, great movie. And I don't know. I just have like big connection to I Spell on Your Grave because I think that was like probably my first like revenge film like in general I feel like I've seen, and that
Might have been mine
really
too.
like lured me in. And then yeah, now I have like a whole collection of like rape revenge movies.
Yeah, and I don't remember if I think you said you didn't like the remake that much, or
No, but I
what your
haven't
thoughts were.
revisited in a long time,
I remember
so
liking
I
it.
feel like I need to try again.
I feel like I liked it like a lot when I first saw it because like the revenge portion of that movie was like more like what I wanted to see from the original. Like at that time when I was still like super fucking like ooh he did it mad. So like the savagery of the revenge in that movie was like super satisfying for me. Like in that, and like the initial assault was like still like super brutal. Like it was different, but it was still like brutal. And like I feel like they balanced out like the brutality in that movie. So like it's a different vibe, but like I feel like I have an appreciation for like both now.
Totally, and then like I don't know, it's really funny because I'm just talking shit about movies who have like inconsistent tones, but one that I really like is Nail Gun Massacre.
I haven't seen that
Um,
yet.
my old hardcore project Iced, we like used like art from that movie for our EP. Um,
Nice.
and that movie is really like funny and silly. I really recommend it, but like it is a rape revenge movie, but yeah, that movie is great, and like the like killer has like one-liners, which feels like really inappropriate, but it's so much fun. I love it. One of the men is like peeing in the woods somewhere, and then the killer walks up, like in front of him while he's peeing and starts peeing on his shoe, and he says, "Now you've really pissed me off," and like kills him. It's so good.
Oh, that's the kind of stupid puns that I fucking love.
Exactly. So it feels weird because it's a rape revenge movie, but it fucking rips though, nonetheless. This is actually a pretty good leeway in. At least at one point was. I'm really good derailing. I'm like very much like
Oh, me too. Me too. I
scattered,
got you. Yeah.
chatty bitch. But
Oh, yeah.
I guess like this is like kind of like two topics in one almost. But like I guess like the mainstream's like fascination with like extreme and how it kind of like we kind of go through like these like loops almost with like mainstream horror. And I feel like a lot of people kind of write off a lot of like the like mainstream films as not fitting within the extreme genre when they're definitely there. Like for example, when like you know early 2000s era when like Saw,
Mhm.
Hostel,
Yeah.
even like the like
Yeah, that
2003
era.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie and shit like that was like really popping.
Hmm.
And I feel like the like extreme community likes to write like a lot of that off. And then like now we're back though because like I mean Terrifier 2 made like
Yeah.
fucking millions of dollars
That's
and
so
is like
fucking
it was
dope.
in theaters and shit. Like I feel like, you know, people act like on both ends. The extreme community wants to be really gatekeeping and be like, this can't be extreme cinema because it's like some major Hollywood production. Meanwhile,
Hmm.
mainstream audiences also act like they're beneath that shit, but then they go fucking see it. So like,
Hmm.
I feel like at the end of the day,
Uh,
we're all really drawn to it. And then like we get into like all sorts of like weird territories. Specifically, something that comes to mind is like the Lifetime network, like exploitation movies. I don't know if you've like ever really ventured into that realm, but it's
I
fucking
didn't know
bizarre.
about any of that.
Okay, so yeah, you're familiar with Lifetime Network,
Oh
like
yes,
the
yes.
like yeah, they have like a lot of like exploitation movies. And it's really
Really?
interesting because
I want
of
to know more
course
about
they
that.
don't read as that. Yeah, I'll send you some.
Yes, please.
Like they don't like, openly go out and be like this is like an exploitation fucked up movie, but then you watch them and you're like this is a woman being tortured and raped for like an hour and a
Oh
half
my god, I've
very
never seen
like
anything like that in Lifetime.
gratuitously and
Holy
like
shit.
yeah, and it's just like fucking like absurd to me that like I guess like as a whole we aren't really like recognizing any of this for what it is like really, you know what I mean? But yeah, Lifetime be fucking wild.
Also on that, the mainstream being fascinated by extreme horror, I remember when the Human Centipede was like broke into pop
Mm.
culture. That was like a whole phenomenon, and that was like a whole fucking thing.
Yeah, people were like obsessed even with like a Serbian film that was like in
Yeah, that
itself
was
pretty huge too.
yeah. Like I heard about a Serbian film like by some guy in the break room at work talking about it. Like he was like watching like fucked up movies. Like oh yeah, I watched this movie, a Serbian film. I kind of wish I hadn't seen it. I was like ooh, what's he talking about? I'm
Yeah.
gonna find out. I
And
want to
like
see a movie
even
like that.
right, and then like even like again like tracing back to like now and like current stuff like in like the past like when was that like
2010.
2020 2019 when like the like disturbing movies Iceberg came out.
Yeah,
And
I didn't know it was a big thing. Like, but it was a big thing apparently. So tell me more about that.
yeah, yeah, I was like really in deep when all this was happening because I was just like, what the fuck? How does this video have millions of views talking about dirty movies that I feel like I can't talk to about with like, average folk in my day to day, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
And it was really interesting just like the perspective on that because well, I think the iceberg itself that got pretty big is very misinformed and I'm sure that person who made that like did not expect for it to like turn into like a sensation in the way it did by any
Hmm.
means. But I guess like the most notable player and all that was like Wendigoon who has like fucking millions of subscribers like talking about it and like going through each movie, but again it was like some like average dude who hasn't seen any of these movies talking about them, which was like really fascinating and also kind of like
That must have
made
been a
things really weird.
fucking trip watching that. Like
Yeah,
the
yeah,
average
and then it
Joe
made
talking
things
about
like
like a Serbian film or something. Like this is wrong somehow.
yeah, and then it made things really weird in like the extreme underground world because everybody was really like upset and got more gatekeepy because there was like so much like misinformation coming
Hmm.
around because of like the mass like hype around it and with like YouTubers having like fucking millions of subscribers talking about like these films that they more or less haven't seen. And I just feel like that was like just a really wild time just to see like so many like people who have never seen like a movie like Cannibal Holocaust being like, okay, let's go. We're talking about like the life and death of a porno gang, like shit like that. And like as the iceberg goes down further, there's like things that aren't even like narrative films anymore. Like there's like I can't even think of a good example of what's on there, but like
I
a lot of
remember it
like
goes like
mixtapes and like stuff like
yeah, I
that.
remember it goes like what is like supposedly like real snuff tapes or something like towards like the deepest levels.
Yeah,
There's like
yeah, and like a
rumored to
lot of
be
the
real
stuff has
snuff
like a
tapes.
lot of
Yeah.
yeah, with like a lot of like myths and like mistruths about it, and
Yeah.
then like what suddenly people are covering what is like dark web mixtapes and shit like that, and then it's just you watch it and it's clips from like a fucking extreme film, but none of these people have seen those movies, so they don't know that's fake kind of
Yeah.
thing. And yeah, I feel like that was just like a really wild time. And again, back to my point of everybody's into this shit, but some people are less likely to like just own it and really get into it for what it's worth, kind of thing.
Hmm. Like Flower of Flesh and Blood, there was that whole story. It was like Charlie Sheen. Or
Charlie
something
Sheen.
saw it and he thought it was
Yeah.
really called the FBI.
So
Probably when he was
silly.
coked
I
out
just
of his
love the
fucking
fucking
mind,
thought
like,
of
"Oh my God,
that.
this is real.
Exactly.
When I was watching
And
that,
like,
I,
I mean, like, with that too, though, like, again, you and I talk about our experiences of not realizing like movies can go that far, and just the thought of being some like coked out man who's never had any real exposure to anything and being like, oh fuck, you know?
I think we kind of covered like a little bit of this, but like the idea of like pushing your boundaries also in a safe, controlled space, like understanding like your morals and like feelings on things more.
Totally. I guess that like this was not something I've written down, but makes me curious just because. Yeah, do you have anything you have like a hard stop on that you're like not gonna watch, I guess within the realm of like movies, you know, like narrative films?
I don't think there is, except I mean, like, the only thing I would be like a real snuff film or something. Like I feel like I would be like, no, thank you. But aside from like something like real, like I guess it's like not really. And like I still have like a tolerance of like a certain amount of real stuff too. So because I feel like it's important to like see what like death can look like. Because I feel like it's makes it this more tangible thing. Like it's humbling too, just to be like, this is what a person will look like when they die. Like, because not everybody sees that. Like some people do, but I don't know. We need to prepare ourselves for death. You know. I feel
Yeah,
too
and
many
plus like
people are afraid
I mean
of thinking about it. So
there's like the really like wild shit when it comes to that, but then I think like a really like valuable film within like real death is Orozco the like Embalmer, because that's like actually like a great documentary that just kind of shows the life as opposed to being like shocking for shocking's sake. It just happens to like depict real death, and I recommend it. It's really awesome, and it's really interesting to see I guess how somebody behaves who is met with death like every day kind of thing, and how they are about it. I really like that documentary a lot, and isn't the like classic like borderline Michael Bay production like ISIS like beheading shit. So yeah.
and then there's the whole Faces of Death thing. Which I have that little collection. I've only seen the first two. I haven't seen 3 and 4 yet, but I know it's like mostly fake in the first one. I hear that there's like more real stuff in the next ones, but I'm not sure if there's any truth to that. Like, have you seen the rest of them? Or
No, I've only seen the first one, and that was it. It's just one of those things where I'm just like, this is kind of like hokey, you know, like wasn't really my thing. I think I need to like revisit though. So I definitely saw that again, with the mindset of like I need to see fucked up shit as a teenager kind of vibe. So I'm curious how much I would like it as like an adult, just for like the experience of like to see people more or less showing off their like ability to do like special effects. You know, have you seen the like Traces of Death movies?
I used to have the collection of them. Then I had only watched the first two. I hated it when they fucking started trying to like make jokes and shit. Like it was the worst fucking jokes too. It was awful.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not really into like that vibe, especially because I feel like we're getting like not like fully. This is more of like a 1 to 2 years ago kind of thing where I feel like a lot of people on YouTube were basically making like reaction videos, like gore content, and it was really like weird and like bizarre because I'm just like, this is like fucked up. Why are you joking? Like
Yeah.
somebody died.
Like the first one, I kind of like found like some value with because like it played it a little more straight and wasn't. It was like kind of more matter of fact, I guess. Then it just got really, really uncomfortable, like in a way that I don't feel like feeling uncomfortable. Like I like to push my discomforts, but like I'm good with watching like the worst riff track ever of real deaths. You know.
Yeah, and like also it's just like that weird thing where I know everybody has like a different relationship with it all, but like I definitely like sought out like gore content when I was like I don't even want to say sought out because I don't even think that's necessarily true. Just like I encountered. Whoa, I accidentally fucked up my mic. Um, that's what happens when you just fidget. But
Yeah,
I
my
like
knees are
just
shaking.
think.
They're always fucking fidgeting.
Yep. I just feel like I like encountered like a lot of like real gore content and like I'm not like the 9/11 generation. I'm too young for that, but like I was on like the generation that saw like Osama's dead body on like public access like television at like 7 a.m. before school. So like and like with just like I don't know, I encountered like a lot of that, like a lot of like infamous gore videos online because for some reason everybody was really into just like sending each other that shit and like watching it. And like as somebody who encountered it a lot during like when my brain was developing, I'm like, I don't really need to like purposely go seek out like real death in like really like brutal, awful ways.
I guess like the value that I assign to it is just like the, like I was kind of like saying before, that's like a seeing, like an understanding like what death is like. Like I'm a very visual person, so it's just like a thing that I know I'm gonna need to prepare myself for at some point. So it's like experiencing that like in a way that I can kind of control, you know.
Definitely makes sense. I think like the thing, if I'm being honest, that, like really like started to like detour me from that is like seeing people like actually die, and I was just like, I don't need to see like an ISIS beheading or like a brutal
Mm,
cartel video
yeah,
anymore. Like,
I gotcha. Yeah.
I guess like another thing I have is I guess just like how we got here with these films. Like, for example, most notably that comes to mind is like the was it Nico Daruma movies, like the Tumbling Doll of Flesh and like Tumbling Doll of Shit, and
I
like
haven't heard about
stuff like
those.
that.
What are those about?
Oh wow, okay,
Yeah.
so you're in for a ride.
Okay.
So Tumbling Doll of Flesh, this will say everything about it is that the most easily accessible like place to watch is on like a porn site. Um so yeah, basically like the premise is like I think Massacre Video did a release of it, but I'm a Massacre Video hater.
Mm,
But, so basically the premise is like a woman's like going to go, I think, film a porn. I think that's the premise. It's found footage and however things are more than she ever bargained for kind of thing, and it like turns into this like really like nasty like torture film more or less of her just being like dismembered, skinned, and like all this like crazy fucked up shit. And I feel like that's a really interesting one in terms of like when it comes to like would we have ever gotten these films, because that's a Japanese movie, and as we know, Japan's like super hardcore with their censorship. Like you can't show like genitals or like penetration
yep.
or
I
anything.
remember when I was like
So I
looking up
just
hentai back in the day, I'd be like, "Fuck."
right, yeah, and
Yeah.
like I feel like that like forced things to get weird, even with like hentai. Like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, we can't show genitals, so now we have tentacles and like other phallic things entering orifices and like shit like that. And because the thing with like tumbling doll flesh is like I think is super like intriguing to me is that we're able to see like a woman get like have all these horrible things done to her, but I can't see like her vagina, or I can't see
Yeah.
like the penis going into her, and it's like completely censored. So I always like wonder when it comes to like the super like extreme like fetish films like that, if they would really like exist if it weren't for like censorship.
Like when like the roughies kind of came out, and it was like it was okay to like have like naked women being brutalized as long as like they weren't like having sex with someone.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a whole thing. Like I wasn't sure, I forgot what the whole deal behind it was, but it was had something to do with not being able to show like sex in a movie. So like of course it's just anger is like the next thing to go with. And I think one of my topics might have something to do with that, like how like especially like a lot of Japanese films, like most of like a lot of the sexual content is like violent, like sexual stuff,
Yep.
and that comes with like the repression, like hating this thing that they have to suppress, kind of, with like this weird kind of. I mean, like same with like the American films, like when there was just like it was okay to have like a dude like beating up a naked woman or something, but as long as they weren't fucking, just like the hating the thing they were attracted to, kind of.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And just like really interesting because I'm like, how is this fine when like
Hmm.
sexuality isn't? You know, like
Yeah.
it's just one of those things that always like blows my mind and is really interesting to me, especially with like the whole genre. Because now we're like fucking like balls deep into like all of that, you know.
Hmm.
Most notably with like Sam Hell films, like they're all just like extreme like gore fetish movies and stuff like that. And then like I always forget the term, but like with like in Japan, they have like a lot of movies like that, and, like anime, manga, etc., where it's just like extreme gore, but it's
Hmm.
sexual in some kind of manner.
Yeah, I've got one. It's called Blood Shadow. It's like super gory, like hentai flick.
Hmm. But yeah, sexuality and then like the repression of it's so weird and like it's really weird because I watch like a lot of anime and I feel like I don't know, shit gets weird really fast and I'm like, whoa, we didn't need to go there.
Things that
A
things
lot of
fucking
the
escalate.
time.
Things escalate quickly. Like even like I hear people like saying like they'll like let their like younger kind of kids play like Grand Theft Auto or Red Dead Redemption, and they'll be like, it's like okay, it was okay. Like I was just making sure you didn't like see any of the sex stuff. I was like,
Okay, like literally even same with like my upbringing, like I was
yeah,
able to like see like all these like really wild horror movies, but like there's like a sex scene or like nudity. My mom was like, you can't see that. And I'm like, but I just watched like 10 people get murdered, which I would say is objectively worse
yeah, it's
than
weird messaging that sends. It's so fucking crazy,
yeah.
and it's like
I even
looking back and like kind of recognizing that it was just like I feel like they just were so uncomfortable with talking about it and they didn't know how, so they just that was like the worst thing because that was the thing they didn't know how to like talk about. At least that was like my kind of experience a little bit, a lot of it,
yeah.
especially
And then,
about the
like,
Catholic
even with
shit.
that too, I feel like a lot of people try to say, like, argue that like rape scenes are like never needed or like should never be like depicted or shown.
Hmm.
I'm like, but we also saw people get murdered in this movie, and that's a thing that happens to people. But that's
Yeah,
fine. Like,
yeah. It's like I feel like it's been like I think maybe part of it is it's like there's like rape scenes have been like eroticized like way too much, and like there's like kind of like an overcorrection coming. Like we can't. It's like let's not show any kind of even like in like more mainstream movies like it's like sex like consensual like sex is like barely shown in like movies now, like in the mainstream at least. And
yeah, or like even like nudity in general. Like
yeah,
I felt really wild like when I saw Infinity Pool because there's lots of like full frontal nudity. I was like, whoa! I feel like I haven't seen it like shit like this in like fucking years. And this is like something I like absolutely am only scratching the surface on because I don't know what the like. It's one of those like topics where I'm like, I can never delve deep because I just don't have it in me to in the sense of like really like getting there but like the how much like sexuality there is in horror how much like sex there is
mm-hmm.
and how like these things are really like hand in hand which I always thought was like super interesting but I don't have the words or like thoughts to really explain how or why that occurs in the way it does.
I think it's like things that are like taboo and like not really like socially acceptable like talk about. It's like there's something kind of in common there, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like really what kind of unites them, like these two like forbidden things just kind of merging and stuff. I guess one of them, that one topic that I kind of wanted to come back to was like Like I don't know like what your experience with this would be, or if you would feel comfortable talking about it, but like watching extreme horror from a mentally unhealthy place versus like a healthy place, and what that experience is like, and like reflecting on like the differences and stuff, because I know it's like a really big difference for me. So I'm wondering if like if you've experienced something like that, and if so, if it would be something you'd be wanting to discuss.
Totally. So I guess my main thing is like I've been like perpetually like unwell for like my whole life kind of. So like I that's like the interesting thing is like I don't really have much of a take of on it for that reason, but like I almost feel like, I have my highs and lows, but I feel like when I'm at my lows, it kind of gets like almost like monotonous to me to like watch these films in a way. In the sense that I'm just like, okay, cool, like another woman being raped and tortured or like,
Mm-hmm.
extreme gore. Right on, dude. Whereas like I feel like when I'm in a better place, it's easier for me to like I guess understand kind of where these films come from and why they come about. And I guess more so appreciate like I guess like the artistry and craftsmanship that like comes behind them. And that's really like the main difference for me, just because I feel like there usually isn't like much of like a big difference in terms of how I'm perceiving like the content itself at hand, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. What my experience was is like I was in like a very like extended period of just like not being well. So like it wasn't like an up and down. It was mostly just like a down. And like I was like doing my Evil Steve show and watching all these movies, and it was wearing me down. And there was also like other things that were wearing me down about making it like just like my health mentally in general was like really really declining. And I was like really pushing myself to like watch all these movies and like comment on them and like analyze them and stuff, and like I feel like I just kind of lost the capacity at some point because I was just like so down that it was just like too much to handle to really watch the kind of movies again. And I think that's kind of why I got away from them for a while, and like I'm starting to come back to them more now. And like and now it's like the opposite. Like I'm in like a more consistently healthy space mentally, and it's like I'm able to, like you were saying, like appreciate the intentions and like the artistry of the whole film, and like I said, like watching a Serbian film when I was like really depressed versus now, like, and I think it's like, oh my god, this is a kind of a masterpiece. I'm not even kidding. Like that was my take on it. I was like, I just like felt
Damn,
like,
maybe I'll watch a Serbian film like tonight when we get off, high key, because I've been really like itching for it again and like
yeah.
have a movie that makes me feel things. But I guess like honestly, I don't really have like big feelings in terms of like extreme cinema when it comes to my
Mm-hmm.
mental health, but I guess it kind of like loops in though with like the depressing like dark dramas I really enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I kind of find solace in them in a way when I am down more than anything. Kind of just like
The dark
almost
dramas I
like kind
vibe
of
with that absolutely same for me.
it kind of like I don't know. I don't want to say brings me up because it doesn't, but it kind of like validates and like almost
Yes,
affirms what
yes,
I'm feeling,
yes.
if that makes sense.
Absolutely, I absolutely experience it the same way. Like having like traumatic stuff reflected like in a way that's like not like as visceral as like an extreme horror movie, like is very validating for me too, definitely.
And that's like usually what gets me too is like those kinds of movies. Those are like more so the movies that make me like feel some type of way at the end of the day. Like
Mm-hmm.
we talked about Mysterious Skin, but like
Yeah.
that movie, of course. And then like although like a comedy, but like Happiness, definitely. And even wow, what was I thinking of? There's another movie I was thinking of. But anyways, oh, Zero Day. Um that movie made me feel like a lot.
Oh no. That was the one you
Columbine
told me about and I
as
watched. Oh, that was incredible.
yeah,
Yes.
that
Duh.
might be like my favorite found footage movie,
Yes,
honestly.
that was incredible.
So
Yeah.
good, so well done. And yeah, like movies like that are definitely ones that like really like get me, or like Elephant even.
I haven't
Like
seen that one yet. I really want
those
to.
you should. It's really good. It's one of those things that like definitely like I don't know, takes a lot of processing time, I feel like, with those movies too. But Elephant's like absolutely like phenomenal. Like in my opinion, it's like similarly to like August Underground in the sense of like if you're not in like the right mindset or watching it for the right reason, you'll probably find it to be like very boring and
Hmm.
lackluster and then like that kind of vibe. But if you're in like the right mindset and feeling and searching after the right thing while watching it, you'll definitely feel like what its intention is and it will hit you pretty like hard kind of thing.
Yeah, that's really what I like to go for. Is the ones that like hit me hard and like leave an impact. Like especially like when I'm having trouble like feeling things like just like a pound to my chest. Like there you go, you're still alive.
Yeah, Elephant was one of those few movies that I needed like a palate cleanser after watching because I was like, I
Yeah.
feel fucked up now.
Sometimes I watch Land Before Time as a palate cleanser for something because that's like a very blanket palate cleanser for me because that's like a special happiness place movie for me. Do you have any special
My
happiness
like
place movies that you always like to put on?
yeah, so I have a few. Definitely like I really enjoy watching Smiley Face, also from Greg Araki. That one always gets me, mostly just because, well, like one, that's like some fucking real shit,
Hmm.
and then it's just so funny. And it always kills me because I'll watch it with like my partner, and he'll be like, "Bro, I want you to understand what you're like when you're high," and I'm like, "Damn." But that's a really good one. So I also again funny parents LOL, but like my weirdly I was like grew up like with the whole like Jackass like CKY shit was like something I watched like growing up, and that's always like a really good palate cleanser for me because like that shit like I
Hmm.
don't even care how dated it is, it's still so fucking funny like every time. For like a non like outside of the realm palate cleanser, in terms of like it's technically horror, but the Fuck the Devil movies, like one and two,
I want to get those. I'm gonna
those
get
are
those.
great
Next,
palate cleansers.
there's like so many of them left. I'm like, I bet I can grab it like on the next sale they do. So
Yeah, definitely. That
fun.
was like one of those ones where I was like, damn, this shit didn't sell. But then again, naturally, all those companies like putting out shit nobody's ever heard of. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's a great one though. It's definitely like I just love like the essence of it in terms of just being like some teenager definitely like fucking around and like having fun trying to make a movie.
I love the fucking like DIY horror when there's like you can like see there's like a lot of heart in it. Like they don't have like any fucking money or experience, but they're like have like so much ambition and like creativity and like they're just gonna do it and I fucking love it. I think we kind of touched on this before, like, but like depictions of violence for people who haven't seen a lot of real life violence to kind of actualize and like have like a real concrete impression of what that can be like. 'Cause, like, I kind of touched on that when I was like saying like the value I get out of watching like a real death kind of video or something, as long as it's like not like done in like an awful way, like Traces of Death 2 and onward or something.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like I don't know, with that like I feel like a lot of people do find like a lot of value in like seeing like fake and like extreme death like that,
Mm-hmm.
and it's always interesting to just see like what other people's like limits are. Like,
Yeah.
for example, with like the success of like Terrifier 2 and people being like, yeah, this is like the most extreme shit I've ever seen. Which honestly, that shit was pretty fucking wild for being a movie that was like in theaters. But
Yeah.
at the same time, it
Hell
was
yeah.
still very like goofy in a way. Like, for
So
example, like the
goofy.
infamous
Yeah.
bedroom scene, like
Like
was
Art
just
was
so
funny
like
too, so it was like weird laughing at him while he was doing this insanely awful shit. You know?
Yeah, and like I don't know, it was really interesting to have the like polarizing feel because like I was like, well, he's just a silly little guy doing silly little guy stuff, whereas everybody was like, this is the most fucked up shit I've ever seen, you know, like so I feel like there is like some value in people like seeing content like that and seeing like how other people take away like stuff like that because like I don't know, like Terrifier 2 is probably like the craziest shit like so many people have seen, whereas I'm like, I don't know, man, that was silly, goofy. I've seen stuff that was made to look like really realistic and be very like brutal, and that shit sucked to see, you know?
Yeah, yeah. It's like it's kind of like Dead Alive too. It's like Dead Alive is one of like the goriest
Hmm.
movies ever made, but it's like so silly that it's like it hits different.
Exactly. And then like then I feel like somewhere that kind of meets somewhere different, which also goes along with the conversation with like the mainstream definitely being extreme, like the 2013 Evil Dead, like
Mm.
that shit was fucking wild. And I feel like another movie that I think is important to the discussion of extreme cinema that nobody wants to talk about and it fucking pisses me off, which is Passion of the
Oh
Christ.
my god, ugh.
That's an extreme film. I don't
It
give a fuck what
is.
anybody says. Anybody who says it's not is like fronting way too hard and trying to gatekeep. But that's just a like literally like a Jewish man being tortured for fucking 2.5 hours, and it's like definitely like
I
very exploitative. And when we're not seeing a Jewish man being tortured, we're seeing Jewish people being depicted in like the worst light like ever and demonized to like the most, and I consider that to be like the most mainstream like extreme movie there
I'm
is.
so glad you brought that up because I thought of it and then I forgot that I thought of it. So I'm so glad you brought that up because that is like extreme brutal violence, and they'll like justifying why they're like this like interestingly like masochistic kind of reason why they like it, if that makes sense. Like the glorious
Yeah,
suffering, like they like fetishize the suffering almost.
yeah, they definitely fetishize the suffering, and it's definitely like 100% like trauma porn for sure.
Uh,
um and yeah, to me just like so wild that like that movie never enters like the discussion ever, when that's probably definitely the most mainstream, most popular like exploitation like extreme film like
yep, like the
to basically like exist.
highest grossing exploitation film ever made. One of the things is like dealing with like how other people can view like their like what they think of you for like watching like extreme movies. It's like, oh, like what the fuck's wrong with this person kind of thing, like, and like dealing with that, and like how it kind of makes me like keep my interest to myself. Like I don't really talk about some stuff that I'm interested in or things I want to talk about because it's just like, well, this person's just gonna think I'm fucked up or something. So maybe I just shouldn't bother, kind of thing.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, that's like a thing that's like been always like really weird for me just because I feel like I don't know, I definitely like wear my interests on my sleeve kind of thing,
Mm,
but only to like a certain extent because
same.
it's one of those weird things where I feel like people will often have like a basic level of understanding of what I'm into, but not like the full extent.
Mm,
And getting to that full extent is really difficult, especially with horror.
yep.
Mostly because like I don't know, people are definitely wrapped up in what is like mainstream horror, but I'm like in general, even like beyond extreme, just like horror in general, like it goes really deep. I have fucking all this shit behind me. I have like memorabilia everywhere kind of thing. And I always thought it was like really interesting just because I don't know, it's always been like weird to me, kind of like the lack of understanding there is, especially just because I don't know. I feel like I don't carry that same kind of judgment really. But people
Mm,
really do, and like I've definitely have had it like a lot where I've had like other people even other people who really do enjoy horror, but like mainstream horror more or less, be like, really like, why the fuck would you watch that kind of thing? And I'm like, I don't know. I like it all, and I kind of want to experience it all, and like I feel like that's kind of partially where my mental illness comes in, where I'm just like needing to just like dig deeper and deeper and deeper and like just find out more, have like more knowledge about like the things I like kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really hard to like explain that and like get to that. And yeah, I feel like with extreme horror, I'll like probably never like have a discussion around like the actual movies like I get into kind of thing with like the people I work with or anything like that. You know what I
Same,
mean?
same.
I wish I could like explore those with like a lot more people. That's kind of also like where I feel like being like I always say I've been like chronically online because like even like when I was like younger, like growing up as a teen, I had more friends online than I did in real life kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, like I feel like it's kind of made like things feel closer with like my like very close friends who do get it just because we do have the like shared similar interest. It's kind of like almost like a naughty forbidden topic
Yup.
almost.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I definitely try to keep my interest to a degree somewhat guarded as well, just because of what I do for a living and like the kind of work I've been in for a while,
Mm-hmm.
because it gets weird real quick to be like, hey, I work for like a rape and crisis center. I watch movies where women are being raped and tortured. I feel like sometimes my like special interests just come out as like word vomit, and then I'm like, oh no, I shouldn't have like talked about that. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I recall somewhat recently, I don't know why we were talking about this in a staff meeting, but like Milo and Otis came up. And I was like, listen, did you fucking know that all those animals were fucking killed for that movie? And like, it was just one of those like earth shattering moments for like everybody in that room. And then I was also like, I shouldn't have like talked about that kind of thing. Like that was not chill for this conversation, even though it was like still very relevant, right? So like, yeah, it gets weird sometimes, needless to say. Yeah, I feel very like thankful and like lucky that I have like a partner who's like really into that shit. He's not really into like extreme films necessarily, but he'll like watch them and tolerate them. And often it's usually the kind of thing where he's just more so like, let me know if this was a good movie and it's worth my time because then we can watch it together later kind of thing, as a since a lot of it's garbage
Mm-hmm.
is like the true like honesty with it. But yeah, sometimes it leaks out into like my professional life and I'm like, "Oh no. I should not have went there with like normies who have not seen something who was that was like a horror movie that wasn't in theaters." You know what I mean? So,
Yeah. Yeah. I know
yeah.
what you mean.
Also, I guess like do you ever have like the situation happen where like a person that's not into horror movies asks you for recommendations?
I think I have.
It's
I
always so
must have then.
fucking weird.
Yeah, because it's like, well, fuck. What kind of recommendations should I give this person? Because like, that can go so wrong.
Yeah, and like it's hard to like balance like, okay, I can think this is a good movie. Well, it's somebody else think this is a good movie. Would they give a fuck? Is this like their jam in like any kind of way? And like it's also like how deep should I go? You know what I mean? And
Mm-hmm.
that's like the part where I
Yeah.
resist, like where I never know how deep is like appropriate, if that makes sense. Because like thing is, I feel like excuse me, lose sight at times in terms of what is like watchable to the average person, if that makes sense. Because like,
Yeah, that's happened to me. Like, I'm better now, but like I used to be like have like a little on the clueless side, and like I would like see something like fucked up and like just think like, oh, if this person saw it, they would realize that fucked up movies can be cool. And it's just like, nope, they just were like, why the fuck did you show me that?
I have a kind of like a funny story. I don't hang out with this person anymore, completely unrelated to this event. But a former friend of mine, like, I just remember she came over and the plan was like to have like some drinks and like watch a movie, just kind of like vibe. And she was like, "What's like the most fucked up movie you own? Like, can we
Oh
watch
no.
that?" And I went like really light in the sense of like, I think Cannibal Holocaust is like an appropriate entry level fucked up movie, if that makes sense.
I
Just
mean, it
because,
does. It was
like, I don't know.
like we were saying, it was like our first ones, like extreme. So
Yeah, like to me
I
that
can
felt
totally
appropriate.
understand.
Like, I wasn't actually gonna go there to what is actually the most fucked up movie I own, but I was like, this should like, satiate what she's going for.
Hmm.
But then she was like deeply upset about it. We turned it off. And like I feel like that says like a lot about like the situation in terms of like the two kinds of people who are like, oh, movies can do that, that rips, and then movies can do that, they fucking shouldn't kind of thing.
Hmm.
So
I haven't shown my partner like any extreme films, but like she's also like I really feel like it would just be like not a thing she would want to see, and like I've been like trying to like explain what it is I like about him, because I guess she's just like curious, like why would somebody be into that, and it's like, well, I feel like having like discussions like this are helpful for figuring that out. And, like that kind of brings me to like another topic I wanted to bring up, which was like what's it like experiencing these movies in like isolation as opposed to like having conversations, and like if it can be like a traumatic thing and like a negative have like negative effects, because I feel like potentially like because I definitely feel like better like when I'm able to talk about this stuff and like unpack it, and like when it's all just like stuck like on me, it's just like it kind of feels not great, if that makes sense.
yeah, totally. I mean, I definitely like have had that before, especially because like, especially on the opposite end of like, maybe this movie wasn't like the move for this setting. Um, One that like really comes to mind with that is I we hang out with like another couple who is they're deeply into movies and really like that. We have like movie nights. We watch usually two each time, and
That's fun.
uh funny enough, they presented to us to watch We Are the Flesh, and simply that was not a group watch movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there are
Like I
movies that
feel like
are solo watches. You can watch it by yourself and then talk about it after.
yeah, and that was one of those moments where I was like, man, I feel like maybe we should just watch this independently, kind of thing, as opposed to bringing it to the table for everybody to watch, which I thought was really funny. I joked about for a while after, was like, LOL, I wasn't the one to bring that to the table, which is really funny. Like, yeah, definitely. I feel like sometimes it's like a little difficult because there's like some movies where I watch like a lot on my own. That's usually where the setting I do like a lot of my like extreme cinema viewing
Same.
is independently, usually while like Jordan's like up to something else. And it's like difficult because like a lot of time I'm like, I want to talk to somebody about this and like
Same.
what
Yes.
all this is and what it means.
Exactly.
And then yeah, and I have to eventually like get him on board. Like for example, a movie I've been like dying to try to get him to watch so we can discuss is The House that Jack Built, because that's like a movie that like 100% calls for like a lot of discussion because it's very, it goes places. And I feel like I really like the experience of watching things with at least like one other person, just to have like to be able to have those conversations and like dish out afterwards. But sometimes like being
Mhm.
left my own thoughts about these films like feels like overwhelming in a way at times, just because it's like
Yes.
I
Yes.
don't fucking know, man. I need to talk this through with somebody to like truly figure it out and like what this means and what it is. And I also get like really excited about these films too. So that's a big part of it, is that I'm excited to talk about them and watch them. So like really like that interactive piece with that comes with watching it with like another person.
Absolutely. Like I love that about movies. Like I love talking about movies like almost as much as I love watching movies. It's like it's part of the whole experience. For a
And
while.
honestly, that's like a big part of like YouTube for me. Because, like, although it's all independent, it still feels like I'm, like, talking to someone
Yeah.
somehow in some capacity.
Yeah, like that's what it felt like I was kind of doing, like in my Old Evil Steve show. Like I was like talking about these movies I wouldn't get to talk about, and I was trying to make jokes, and sometimes they worked, you know. But but it did get to a point where like I was like watching in isolation too much, and it just kind of didn't really help my depression, I guess. It's not
I
really.
also feel like, personally, when it comes to doing a lot of, like, solo viewing, primarily of extreme films, that is, that's when it starts to feel like kind of monotonous and like I'm like seeing the same shit over and over again,
Mm,
as opposed to when viewing with somebody else makes it more of like a fun experience at times.
exactly. Yes. Yeah. Like for a while before the pandemic, I had a couple of friends, like a married couple, and we would go out to movies that we wanted to see. Then we would hang out in their garage and like smoke weed and like talk about it for like however long we talked about it. And like it helped us like process the movies. And I just been like wanting to get like group movie nights back together. And, like I'm like kind of like trying to like optimize my living room and stuff, like so I can try and get that happening again. And like even wanting to like get a projector and like project movies on a screen on the garage or something and have like a fire and like I want to do more bonding activities like around movies and like 'cause that's like a really healthy thing because like otherwise I have like all these thoughts that like are just like stuck up in my head. I need to do something with them, and it's like you were talking about like a really great bonding experience, like
Yeah,
discussing the
and that's
experience.
why I
Yeah.
really like the movie nights we do with our friends. And then, for example, our new guitarist of a Cold Blood, he's an old new friend kind of thing, old friend who kind of resurfaced kind of vibe,
Hmm.
and he hasn't seen like
Cool.
anything, but he's really curious. So like for like it's really like I'm really excited about showing him movies because it's like, well, like this is shit that you've like never seen or really like delved into. So that makes it like really exciting to see like that person's like first impression again. Like for example, last practice, like yesterday, he was like, I've never seen Gummo. I would like to watch that movie. And I'm like, bet next practice we're watching that shit afterward,
Nice.
And that's also why I want to try to. I fucking like straight up capped my said I was trying to like get this organized by the end of the month because I did not. But like the whole like Discord movie night thing, that's like a big reason why I want to do that, just to like hang out with like a bunch of people and watch some movies and
Yes.
just
Yes.
see what
Absolutely.
we're all about. Especially like people who are all like very much on like the same page of this shit.
Yes.
So
That
that
sounds
makes
like a
it really
fucking
fun.
blast. Hell yeah. I think we kind of covered the majority of this stuff that we came up with to talk about.
Yeah, I guess I have like one thing that like sparked while we're talking, which is I guess like what are your thoughts on like the current state of like extreme cinema and where do you think it will go next, slash like what direction would you be excited to see go next?
Like I'm kind of like at a point where like I'm like re-immersing myself in extreme cinema, so I'm not super familiar with like a lot of the newer things, but
Gotcha.
like I'm getting recommendations, so I'm trying to catch up. Like you recommended Sound of Summer, right?
Mm,
I just bought that. I haven't
yes.
watched it yet, but I'm excited to check that one out.
I'm so excited for you to see that one because that one fucking rips. Mostly just
Nice.
because I think while Sound of Summer is definitely like a body horror film, I feel like that's such like an ambitious move from like a low budget small creator and done like really well.
I
And
love
like
body horror, so hell yeah. That's I'm
once you get
excited.
there to like the true body horror sequence, it feels like fucking insane. Like me and Jordan watched it together, and while we're watching it, we're kind of like chatting throughout like a big part of like the movie, just because there wasn't like much like there's substance but not like a whole lot necessarily. It's definitely like very little dialogue. You can kind of do that kind of thing. And he was like low-key not actually watching, just kind of watching his phone while I was watching in the same room kind of vibe. And then once we hit like the last like act, we were both like silent and he was no longer like on his phone whatsoever and he was like fully immersed kind of thing, which was like really cool, honestly. And yeah, definitely Sound of Summer fucking rips. Yeah,
Hell
I
yeah.
can't recommend that one enough.
What was the second question? Because it was three, I think you asked.
Oh. Yeah, I guess like with terms of like extreme horror, I guess like where do you think like the direction will go next, slash like what would you be excited to see it go in? Since I feel like there's so many offshoots of it, you know what I mean?
Um, like right now, like I said, like I'm kind of like re-immersing myself and like getting familiar with like some of the newer entries into extreme horror. So I'm not at a place where I can like really predict like where it might be going. But one thing that I would like to see that I almost forgot about is that I would like to see something go to like really extremely like low dismal depths and then like bring it back and like make it kind of like a healing experience. If you get what I'm saying, like a
Yeah.
because like from my experience of like depression, like when I was in like a really like bad one that was, it felt like it was like so deep and dark that it was never going to end. Like I want to see something in a movie that like conveys that feeling of like this deep dark endless sadness, but then there's like it doesn't have to always be that way, and it's like it would be kind of like a shock, like if a movie like took that turn and if it was able to go that dark and like come back up. Like I guess like the best example you can think of is, well, Mysterious Skin isn't quite like that, but it is like super dark
In a way.
subject matter. Huh?
I would say in a way, kind of. Like, although it's like
Yeah, in a way, but like
not
not.
for the better, but
Yeah, like there's like this weirdly like cathartic feeling I feel like when I watch it. Like maybe it's just like this weird like validating feeling. I don't know, but like I don't have like any like memory of like any abuse, so I don't know. But there's just something about it that just feels like something comes up and escapes. Like when I
I guess
watch
like
it.
the thing that makes me feel that way about that movie that kind of does come up is that at the end of the day, although it fucking sucks, I think Brian actually coming to terms with his trauma is positive at the end of the day. And in addition to that, I also think that like um kind of them finding comfort within each other does a lot as well.
Yeah, and it's like it seems like both of their realities are kind of like meeting in like the real world, like because Neil's kind of like realizing like that, like he like idolized like the coach, but then like, he's realizing like, oh yeah, that was really fucked up, and I didn't even really realize that at the time, and like they're both kind of like coming into reality together. But so yeah, like that's kind of like something that will like bring it like further out of a dark place than Mysterious Skin, like because Mysterious Skin like took it to a dark place and then like there was like this like darkly healing moment at the end, like it ended with like a darkly healing kind of moment of like the beginning of like the process of healing or something, like you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah, yeah.
Is like just coming to terms with it and then like now like the real healing can begin or whatever. but but yeah, like what do you think about that idea of like an extreme movie like going like super dark but then like things kind of get a little better at the end?
I really like the thought of it, honestly. It kind of reminds me of like happiness in a way. Granted, like I feel like although truly deeply fucked up, happiness is a good example of that. Where like I feel like although like very deeply fucked up, everybody finds their own form of happiness, whether or not something that's like okay or not. And also, despite being like a very hilarious movie, even though it has a whole like I shouldn't be laughing feeling like the whole time, I feel like that movie does like a lot of that. And I really like the thought of like that kind of thing like happening, just because I feel like not many, basically no movies come to mind that like truly have that, and I think that'd be kind of like nice, and especially considering a lot of mainstream movies do that have like very strong Christian like undertones and even overtones. And I think it'd be cool to see it without that, since most of the extreme like players don't like dabble in that, at least not to like the extent. Like, for example, I immediately think of like the Conjuring series. I guess I have one last thing, which I guess, have you seen the Bunny Game?
Yes, I have.
What are your thoughts on like a movie like that where like it's like, yes, the woman had come up with these things herself, but it's obviously very exploitative and like very awful. Um, things that we're seeing like actually on screen because none of it's simulated. Like, what are your thoughts
Hmm.
on like things like that in like a movie?
I thought that I need to revisit it again. Like I haven't watched it again like since I didn't actually did an episode on it on Evil Steve as well. Um, and I remember at the time like thinking it was like a really like effective like kind of performance piece because like I was like watching like interviews with the actress and stuff, and she seemed to like take this like really like interesting like sense of pride in the work, like depicting this like very visceral, brutal like kidnapping and torture. And I think I actually found some like kind of value in that, like seeing like her thoughts on it too. But again, like I have
Yeah,
to
I mean that
check it out again.
I was just gonna say that can like trail back to like what we were talking about with like experiencing these things in like a safe manner by watching these movies, but that's what she did by like partaking in this movie, which is like really interesting.
Hmm. Did you know
Um,
that the actress
just
like it was like based on like her actual kidnapping experience? Yeah, like that was like
yeah,
really. I definitely need to revisit that one and get a fresh take on it.
definitely same. I don't know if I like. I don't know, it's one of those things where like I like feel very unsure about how I feel about like the whole thing. You know, with like unsimulated like wild shit.
I guess we should. I'll like put all your info, like your contact stuff, in like the description for the video, and if you want to shout out anything else like your band and stuff too, you can go ahead and do that.
Yeah, I guess depending on what I mention will depend on, or depending on when this is uploaded depends on what I'll mention.
Hmm.
Do you have like a rough idea of when you think this would be up?
Uh, I don't, unfortunately. I'm sorry.
Okay, so this will depend on,
Okay.
I'll do two takes. One is before August 18th and one is after.
I think I
So
could do it
uh
before August 18th. I think I could get it up before then.
I have a black metal band called The Cold Blood, and we are currently working on our upcoming EP, which will be uploaded to all the popular streaming platforms by August 18th. Currently, there is a pre-save and one song available to listen to now, but the full thing will be available on August 18th. And of course, Sasha will get all the relevant details in the description.
Absolutely.
And I also have a two-man black metal project called Ashgabat. When anything else we do with that comes out is very TBA, but yeah.
Awesome, yeah, and I've listened to both of your projects, and they both fucking kick ass. So
Thank you.
yeah,
Thank you.
it's got like that great like raw like black metal sound.
Yeah, I'm really excited. The Cold Blood, the first demo is, I mean, it's still in the same realm, but the new material's a little different. Has more of that like first wave, like punky influence, which is really fun and will be really cool. So I'm pretty stoked on releasing that.
Hell yeah! Are like they're available like to buy online or when they come out?
Yeah, yeah. So the new, well, I guess the old demo from, I think we recorded that like 2019, Rites of like Loathsome Sorcery, some nerd shit. That demo is available now. You can listen to it, but the new album, The Room in the Ground, that'll be available on, yeah, August 18th. And then, if you have any viewers in the PNW, we'll be doing a little run in September. So, yeah.
Hell yeah. And yeah, I think that's it.
Yep. All right, dope. Well, I'll see you later.
Yeah, this is fun.
Yep, would love to do it again.
Absolutely. Have a good night.
You too. See ya.